It was a tough childhood, and I had, I was young as a three girls, so we all experienced the same things, but we all coped in different ways. But again, for me, I was just, hopeful that there was more to life. I was hopeful that, tomorrow is always going to be a better day. Even now with dealing with my major depressive disorder and having some of the worst days, my thing is, you know what? Today was so shitty that tomorrow can't get any worse. you know.
Any of my brothers that are out there, struggling with their deployment or, life in general, I tell them that, hey, to stay strong and to keep holding on and to understand, you're here for a reason and that, your life and what you're doing does have purpose. Hey everyone, this is Greg Washington and welcome to the next edition of Guards Down. I have with me today Jas. Jas, how's it going?
Everything is good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well as can be, especially now that I got my AC fixed. I'm happy over here.
I know that's right. I can't be stuck in the house and be hot.
Correct. So a quick shout out to the maintenance man. I appreciate you for coming through for me. Look, well, before we get started, tell us about yourself.
So I'll give you the, short, long story. I was born and raised in Chicago, born and raised in the projects. From there, I moved to Mississippi at 16, completed high school there, then got a scholarship to play basketball in Mississippi Valley State, where I had a great time there. And later on I joined the military after college. Like some people say, hey, did you join the military, didn't go to college? No, I went and got my degree first because I think I was the first person in my family, and I was the youngest of three, to not only finish high school, but get a college degree. And that was something I had promised my grandmother I would do before she died, was to graduate college. And I did. So funny story, I went to college on a mass communications, I studied mass communications because I wanted to be a television and radio broadcaster. Like that was my dream. I wanted to be an anchor, be on TV, doing interviews, doing in-depth exposés and stuff. And I didn't know, but back in the 90s, the reporters were still, short, petite women. And here I am, 6 foot tall. And they were like, yeah, you've got great education, you got great grades, you had a great internship, but you're just too tall. And I'm like, what? I wish I would have told me that 4 years ago. And by this time I'm a single mom. And so I'm like, well, I have to, get another plan together. And I really never liked the term as single mom because it has a negative connotation to it. And I had always told my oldest son at the time, it was just me and him, that terms like, single mom, they're words. They're not indicative of how successful you can be or what you can make of yourself. And so I wanted to go into a profession that would be one of the most challenging professions to show him what I could accomplish, regardless of what society said I was capable of. And so that is when I joined the Army. I served for 17 years. I started off as a truck driver. So I was an 88 Mike. Shout out to the transporters. Nothing happens till something moves. And then I commissioned through Army ROTC at UNLV and became a human resources officer because I think service was always in my blood. And I love to help and support people. And being HR gave me the great opportunity to be very hands-on with soldiers and their family members. Had a couple stumbling blocks while I was in. I got diagnosed with a head, neck, and throat cancer 30 days before I was about to ship to Iraq. And 30 days before that diagnosis, I had lost everything to Hurricane Katrina. So 2005 was just a great year of chaos for me. But I eventually did get back on my feet. After I stopped throwing myself a pity party because I realized nobody RSVPs to those. I owed my son more because I had fallen on my sword, and I felt defeated. And every morning he would come and say, "Mom, today's going to be a great day," before he went to school. And I just felt like a hypocrite because I had, told him about being strong, overcoming your obstacles. And I was just laying down like a wounded dog. And then for him, I got up off the couch, got me a job working for the Army Guard, which eventually led me back to active duty. And then my advocacy came after that.
Got you. Okay, so we got we got a couple of things here. You've had a very very active life and experience.
Yeah.
So the two things, right, was the cancer and then Katrina, right? And so those were traumatic experience as well as grief because you had trauma from a natural disaster and your body was dealing with cancer. And so
Yeah.
I know that must have put you in a very weird space, to say the least.
Yeah, it was super weird because like when Katrina happened, we were during train up. So it was like, well, my son, he was with my aunt in Missouri. And so he was safe. And the thing about Katrina was it was just things. And I wasn't there. And my current mission was leading my troops into a combat zone. So I was like, you know what? There's nothing I can do about the loss. I can replace furniture, things like that. My son is safe. I need to focus on the mission at hand. So that gave me like a reprieve from having that traumatic experience bear down on me because I had a different focus at that time. And so then when the cancer happened, then both of those traumas immediately became a reality because now I cannot I can't deploy. There's no forward unit to go back to. I'm homeless, like the hospital, that's where I live because I don't have a apartment or anything to go back to. So I just felt, just worthless and everything just bear down on me. And also I'm not married or seeing anyone at the time. And I'm going through all of this alone.
Right. So, I mean, let's point out the collateral damage of the cancer and Katrina. So you speak of your son. It sounds like he's your heart and joy, right? And like the reason why you definitely get up. Talk to us about the collateral damage, both for you and also for him.
For Brandon, well, he'll be 25 this year. I know you're saying, Jas, you don't look old enough to have a 25-year-old son, but I do. But yeah, he's 25 now. He decided to serve his country. He's in the Air Force. And though he saw me have some down times, I never really let him see me broken. And a lot of things he didn't find out about me later until I got into my advocacy because I started to speak about it. But, of course, there's so much damage from the radiation therapy that I had. I have cognitive decline. I suffer today from major depressive disorder. There's a lot of other, physical and mental aspects to it. But I will tell you that the hardest part of all of that was still being a soldier and your leadership not being able to see it. They could, like when you have a soldier who's an amputee or you have a soldier who may have been burned or something like that, you can identify with what their need is. But with me, you couldn't see it. And that actually gave me more trauma from my leadership who couldn't understand why I still had bad days, why I still had headaches, why I was depressed and things like that. They was like, yeah, you had cancer back in 2006. And I'm like, it's not like I had a cold. It's not something that goes away. So that actually, I think added to my depression and my issues because my leadership wasn't understanding because like you said, things like PTSD, depression, they're silent demons, that you deal with. So it's hard to explain to someone, what's happening to you when they can't see it.
Yeah. Okay. So to take it a step back, because we're talking about the collateral damage, we're talking about you here and now, you know, in the present, you know, at least that time frame of what you were going through and how you had to be strong and not show weakness for your son, and also, you know, being in a leadership position in the military, and then not having leaders that were sympathetic to, or I wouldn't say sympathetic, or I'm just maybe ignorant or not knowing to, you know, what you were going through. So the question is, you know, going back to your upbringing and raising, right? Did your parents or someone, you know, in your life teach you how to deal with trauma and grief effectively?
My childhood is something I'm not really comfortable talking a lot because they were, you know, there were some traumatic experiences back there too. But I will say, because I did have I would just say non-traditional childhood, that there was some strength and resiliency built within me early on as a kid. And it formed me early to let me know the kind of person that I wanted to be, the kind of person that I didn't want to be, and the kind of things that I would not stand for once I got complete control of my life as an adult, and what kind of wife I was going to be, what kind of mom I was going to be. You know, growing up in the projects of Chicago is definitely hard, but it's home. But it teaches you street smarts. It teaches you, survival. So, you know, I would say that, you know, I kind of grew up being Fort Tough. And so when some of these things hit me, I did, because I had, you know, others obstacles early on in life, you know, I did have some familiarity with how to cope with certain things.
Yeah. Okay. So understanding that, and of course, you know, growing up in Chicago, I got family that migrated from Mississippi to there, but like I've never lived there. So, you know, I only hear, you know, the war stories. You know, they talk about Chirac, and just like that, they talk about Vietnam, right? So
right.
growing up in environments like that. So the question is, you know, do you think there is a cultural difference in how people cope with trauma and grief?
When you say cultural, I definitely say yes, because just take the Black community, for instance. We all had an uncle that we used to call crazy, or, you know, or something like that, because mental health really wasn't something that was discussed among our community, or even amongst our family. That was just crazy cousin Charlie or crazy uncle, you know, whatever. And so they were dismissed as just being crazy, but not really recognized as people who truly needed help or had issues. And I don't even think that we got treated, you know, for mental health as a community. It's been more spoken about, you know, more recently with initiatives, but I would think culturally, as a Black community, we don't really speak out about mental health. We really don't get treatment as needed for mental health. And there's still a stigma with saying, hey, I'm depressed, or hey, I'm this, or hey, I'm that. And I'll be 43 this year, and I still don't see enough of that speaking out happening.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So yes, it is a difference, right? Do you feel like your culture shaped how you deal with trauma and grief?
I wouldn't say my culture. Well, I would probably say the military did, because I did have a suck it up and drive on type mentality. You know, and it was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm sad, but things need to get done. Yeah, I'm having a bad day, but this soldier needs this family member needs that. So what shaped my coping was to dive myself into purpose, you know, doing things for other people, keeping busy. That's what's, you know, really helped me. But like culturally, I didn't have a, you know, support group per se, you know, that was available or for me to go to as a Black woman. Yeah, you had your doctor you can go through to the military, but it wasn't something that was talked about amongst my friends or amongst my family, because again, it was a taboo, type of thing in our community.
Got you. Okay. Well, with that, right, to kind of come back to you personally, what were some of the ways you learned to cope growing up, right? Healthy and unhealthy.
Well, I didn't have really any unhealthy coping mechanisms as a child. And the only coping mechanism I had as a child was hope. Hope that, as I got older, things
Like
would change. Sorry?
When you say hope, are we talking religious or are we just talking a brighter future?
Brighter future. So things will envisioning, things will get better. I've never been a religious person because I've had religion in my family, and I've seen religious people do some unreligious things. So I consider myself to be very spiritual. I do believe in God. I do have my own personal relationship, but I am not a religious person.
I definitely understand that. I'm right there with you on that part. Okay, so hope has been your way of coping, and that's beautiful, right? Because, I always talk about people having to go through their darkest hour. And so how do you get yourself out of that rut, out of that spiral down? And hope is definitely that spark of light that, people need to get themselves going and motivated to make a change. So that's awesome. And it sounds like you had a really tough childhood, but you were like a bright spot is what it sounds like.
It was a tough childhood, and I had, I was young as a 3 girls, so we all experienced the same things, but we all coped in different ways. But again, for me, I was just, hopeful that there was more to life. I was hopeful that, tomorrow is always going to be a better day. Even now with dealing with my major depressive disorder and having some of the worst days, my thing is, you know what? Today was so shitty that tomorrow can't get any worse. It is going to be a better day. And, sometimes the good and the bad come in the same day, which is why I posted that picture on LinkedIn I didn't think it would blow up like it did. I didn't do it for attention, but I did it for hope, to let people know that, you know what, it does get better. Sometimes it may take hours, it may take days, but it does get better. But you have to want to have that opportunity. I think sometimes we don't give ourselves opportunities to get better. It's like, I'm just going to let it be a bad day. Yeah. It's already going bad. But it's like, you know what? Let me go look at a Love and Hip Hop rerun or watch The Housewives or something, to get me a little laughter or something going on to get me out of that funk. I think sometimes we just feel like we just have to naturally let it pass, as opposed to trying to fight it. You know what I mean?
Yep. And you bring up 2 great points, right? Laughter to get out of the funk and naturally let it pass. Right? So many people have these high expectations of themselves or of things around them that, it's humbling, right? Once you go through it, and once you accept that humble experience, then you're able to accept, what happened. I did an episode before, and we talked about sometimes bad shit happens and there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
And we tend to place blame on ourselves, right? Unwanted, or even like it wasn't even your fault, but you place blame on yourself, and all this undue stress that's not necessary. So, I mean, when you talk about naturally letting it pass and, just doing something constructive, right, or proactive, like, laughter to get out of the funk, I felt you on that one. I really did. Because there have been times where it's been like, all right, like, yeah, and I'm gonna use your quote. Today was so shitty that tomorrow can't get any worse. So,
Right.
so you have coined
Right.
that is it. Like that's a good one. That's a really good one. So.
Hey guys, it's Jerome. Greg and I wanted to invite you to the community that we created for the whole Guards Down family. Jump on Facebook or check the show notes for the Guards Down Facebook group. There you'll be able to find a community of folks who are committed to raising awareness about complex grief and PTSD. Look forward to chatting with you guys in the group. Now let's get back to the episode.
So we're definitely putting that out there and you getting all the credit for it.
Well, thank you.
Well, look, okay. So what were some signs that you were dealing with grief and trauma that you noticed?
Well, I was always typically a very happy and upbeat person. And then I just started to become a recluse. I didn't want to really go out. I didn't really enjoy the things that I used to do. Didn't want to play basketball anymore. Didn't want to play sports. Just didn't want to interact with people. And even sometimes, like my oldest child is grown out of the house, and I have a 10-year-old. Even sometimes interacting with him, was hard because I had to pretend to be happy in the moment to play with him, because kids are like, they pick up on everything. Mommy, are you okay? Are you sad? Did I make you upset? And I didn't want him to think anything, was his fault. But I just did. The biggest thing was notice that I didn't find joy in the typical things that I used to find joy in, and just didn't want to do anything. But even like now, I'm still a recluse. And so like I will just sit in this space and work from this space in my house mostly all day. But what I learned to do was to make the space kind of like a, what's the word I like to use? Like not a good space, but like a, come on, West Point, give me a word.
Look, I'm still on your thought of I had to pretend to be happy.
Yeah.
Right. Because that took me back to what I was dealing with. So like for me, well, you being a single mom, like you can't escape being a mom. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so you having to be there in the now, even though you might have not emotionally and mentally wanted to be, you still had to be there. And I know for me, it was like, damn, my kids might be better off like without me, and not in the sense of suicide, right? But just, I don't want them to see me in such this down and depressive and in out of control state that, like they can't look up to me anymore. So, when you talk about having to pretend to be happy, that really hit home.
Yeah. And it's hard because you don't want to bring everybody else down. Because, I used to have such, an infectious personality that people would come around me to be happy because I was always happy and upbeat. And now, like, people hate to see you coming, like, oh, shit. Here she come with this sadness again. And just, because, you affect other people. It's like when you yawn and then other people yawn, it's kind of the same thing. It's the energy, that you bring in the room. And my energy was different. And instead of being that person that people avoided, I just decided to avoid people.
That makes sense. So, okay. So we talked about some of the signs and, some of the things that you had to do. What would you give someone advice? What advice would you give someone for trying to support another person dealing with grief and PTSD?
I would say, don't immediately start, well, like some people, when they want to understand things, they just like to ask a lot of questions. And sometimes asking a lot of questions is triggering because it brings back memories for people. Like my husband is a combat veteran who has PTSD, and he doesn't like to talk about it. So I don't ask him about it. But I would say I'm in tune with him to know when he's having a bad day, when I need to back off, when I need to go make him some nice bourbon, or, just, hey, babe, you want to watch a movie? So I would say just the best thing to do would to watch their behavior, to try to notice any signs. If they do want to talk, allow them to talk. Just be an ear, be there. And sometimes it's just sitting there quietly with them. Some people say things like, I don't know how to talk to veterans. I'm like, do you speak English? Like, Samuel Jackson and Pulp Fiction, English? Do you speak it? And if sometimes it's just finding things that you have in common. Like I had a woman before that said, I want to help veterans. I have a neighbor that's a veteran, and I don't really know how to talk to her. And I was just like, hey, do you like wine? And she was like, yes. I was like, girl, me too. So I think we try to overcomplicate things when it comes to mental health and relating to people, that we think it has to be this big grand gesture, or it's just fearful to us. And I'm just like, sometimes it's just the most simplest things, that can help people open up to you. Just like when people like, oh, you're in the military, how many people that you killed? Like, people think that's funny, and it's not. But, I think that we as veterans too, we have to change some of that culture as well, around how we say company.
Mm-hmm.
Because we get certain things, but certain people don't get us. But again, I'll say from the civilian side of the house, you don't have to have served to relate to a person that was in the military. They're an American just like you. They may be a homeowner just like you. They may be a parent just like you. Focus on your commonalities as opposed to your differences. I think that's the biggest thing. We're focused on how different we are when we're not realizing how much we have in common.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, to not overcomplicate it and just be there in the presence. Not that you really have to do much. I remember I had a friend, still a friend, and we kind of got into it. And the reason why we got into it was because, on social media, they have the push-up challenge, right? Do push-up challenge to raise awareness for, veterans with PTSD and blah, 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 right? I don't knock it at all, right? But my thing to her was, you would much rather do this push-up challenge, right, and post it on social media versus you got a veteran right here who could benefit from just talking with you and, being in your presence. And so, like, I felt bad because I came off very harsh, because I'm very blunt and straightforward when I do speak. And so, I had to come back and apologize, of course, for being harsh. But she also thanked me because she was like, yeah, you're right. So what ends up happening months down the road, she has a neighbor who was a veteran and is dealing with PTSD. And guess what? On the weekends, some days, he comes over and he has a glass of wine or two or a bottle of wine with her, and they just talk. And he just gets to, let it out. And she listens to him. And so, she hit me up and she was like, thank you for being an asshole, but
Hey, I tell people wine is great conversational glue. It really is. But, and I understand what you're saying, because I see a lot of those too. And I'm like, how is that really helping? Like, we're aware, like the awareness is out there, but it's like, you know what? It's okay to do both. It's okay to raise awareness, but also what action comes after that? You know, what else? So I get what you were saying, but yeah, delivery is everything. Like I always tell my husband, you are such an asshole, but he's a Marine, so that's kind of their thing. But I always tell him, you know, babe, how could you have said that different? Or, you know, your delivery could have been better, and maybe your message would have been, you know, better received. But that is the thing with us of being military, is that's how we were talked to, and that's how we talk to people. But, you know, it's hard to take that uniform off even after that uniform is taken off. But it's great that you are conscious of that, and you went back and said, hey, this is what I meant to say, you know?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay. So what's been the toughest part of your journey?
I would say the toughest part of my journey is trying to manage my mental health, but also trying to manage being a wife, being a mom, being a business owner, being an entrepreneur, being an advocate. Because all these things are different parts of me. Nothing is the same. Nothing is interconnected. You know, so I have to be so many different things to so many different people. But I also have to be something to myself. You know, so I don't believe in a work-life balance. Like that's something somebody made up to write a book a whole bunch of years ago, but it doesn't exist because people and lives are not pie charts. You know, you can't wake up and say, okay, I'm going to give 25% of myself to being a mom. I'm going to give 10% of myself to being a wife because my husband didn't take out the trash, and 50% is it's like what I learned to do is to whatever I'm doing is to be there in that moment. If my son is talking to me, I am not on my computer. Yeah, whatever. I close it. I pay him attention. I do the same thing to my husband. And so that's what's helped me is to focus on what I'm doing in the moment, because I feel hit the hardest when I'm trying to do different things and trying to please multiple people at a time. And I also have learned to say no a lot. And sometimes you have to say no. Some people get offended, but it's like you have to take care of yourself first. Because if I don't take care of myself, I can't take care of my family. I can't take care of the people who depend on me to advocate for them. And, you know, and I can't take care of the things that need my full divided attention. So if I'm doing 5 things at once, I'm doing 5 things shittily. But if I'm doing one thing, that's my focus, and I'm being a great mom in that moment. I'm being a great wife in that moment. I'm being a great advocate in that moment, or a great entrepreneur or speaker. But that's what I found. There is no work-life balance. You have to find your center and your focus. And that's what works for me.
Gotcha.
And also I had to tell this one person, because they was like, well, if I'm like this, then people will not want to talk to me, or they avoid me. And I told them, do not spend your life trying to become someone people are comfortable with. Period.
All right now. I agree with that one. I really do. So being great in the moment, right, and being something to yourself were like the 2 big key points that I got from that, and that is amazing. Like those, like you put everything in like the simplest terms, because a lot of folks, they tend to not understand what they're going through. It's like, oh, I got all of these crazy feelings and emotions. I don't know what it is. Right. And so, you know, you overreact, you lash out, and you tend to hurt people in the process. Right. So along this journey, have there been people that you hurt, and how did you make amends?
Time. But the word I was looking for earlier was sanctuary. I had to make myself a sanctuary.
Sanctuary.
Yeah. I told you one of my side effects of radiation therapy is cognitive decline. Sometimes I can't find that word, and it'll come to me like days later, like, oh, that's what I meant. Sorry, squirrel. But yeah, just time. You know, sometimes people don't understand, and sometimes you have to give people their own time. Like I can hurt your feelings and say, well, I hurt your feelings because my feelings was hurt, or I was feeling a certain kind of way. And it doesn't work like that. You can't force people to heal in your time or force people to understand in your time, even though you give them an explanation. Like if I shot you, you still felt that bullet, and and you need time to heal from that. And so I say you need to give people their space. And eventually they will think about, what happened, and why you did the kind of thing that you did to them. They'll understand what caused you, to react in such a way. Yes. But it's not okay to just be like, well, because I'm depressed, or well, because I have PTSD. That's bullshit, because everybody got something about them. And you don't get to hurt or get to divert from hurting people just because you're a person. They say hurt people hurt people. Yeah, well, that's how you lose people, And so sometimes if you're, like I said, I'm usually just up here in my little sanctuary. You got my little, if you can see my little paradise thing on the wall, and just calm and relaxing things.
The sea blue and greens. I see you.
Yeah. So if you're feeling like you can't deal with people and you're having such a bad day, then just don't. Because sometimes you're forcing yourself to have a conference call or doing this, and it's not going to go great because you're not feeling your best. And so it's just you are bringing that, like I told you about, bringing that negative energy. Just don't bring it. Sometimes people call you don't want to talk. Don't get on the phone and be shitty to them because, well, I'm just talking to you. I don't feel like talking. Just say, hey, I'm gonna hit you back when I'm having a better day. You have to self-govern your mental health, whether it be through counseling, whether it be to creating your own, space of solace, medication, treatment. But you can't, it's not other people's. I mean, it's great to have a support system. Like obviously my husband supports me, we support each other, but yourself is ground zero, period. So you have to govern yourself, and you can't, nobody's going to fix you. And you can't, again, just lash out at people and think that because you have this thing going on with you, that it's okay and they just have to take it. No, they don't. They can walk away and you can lose people. So you have to, like we say in military, you got to police yourself first.
Correct. And so no one's going to fix you. And you having to, police yourself. Right. So that leads into the next question of, well, did you seek any professional help?
Yes. So I do see, I don't like group therapy because I am a very private person. So I do not do group therapy, but I do have a primary care doctor. I am seen and treated by the VA. I do see a psychiatrist. I am getting telehealth right now with everything that's going on with COVID-19, and I do take medication. And so, yes, I do self-govern and self-police myself by getting treatment on the medical side. And also at home, I create a space for myself that creates some serenity and kind of keeps me calm and gives me peace. So although it's funny because I'm already isolated, and I'm isolated within my isolated house, but you got to find out what works for you. My family understands, why I'm in here most of the day. And as long as they know that I'm okay, they make sure I eat. My husband's a great chef. He makes sure I get my meals. And he's also, a mixologist. So he makes really good drinks. So he'll just come up and just give me a martini every now and then. But we respect each other in our space. And like I said, you just got to find out, what works for you.
Indeed.
And, but definitely, I would say 100% with everything else that you do for yourself, you definitely do need to seek professional help. It all works together.
Right. Okay. So with that, because I want to talk about not necessarily your counselor, but just giving advice to people out there when they need to choose their counselor. And so one of the biggest things that I'm pushing with this whole platform and raising awareness for PTSD and complicated grief is cultural sensitive therapy. Right. And so if your counselor or therapist looks like you or has been through some of the same situations you've been through, then the hypothesis is that the treatment will be more effective and the dropout rate will be lower. Right. You'll tend to want to go in the whole nine. So just in dealing with the different mental health professionals, have you found it easier to talk to someone that has either looked like you or has been through what you've been through, or did it not matter?
I do feel comfortable. I do feel more comfortable with women providers when dealing with my mental health. I don't mind male providers when dealing with physical health. Like I've had 2 knee replacements, things like that. I don't mind. But when it comes to my mental health, I just feel like women get women. That could just be a me thing. I did have one female provider that I didn't like, is because she was treating me like a veteran, but she wasn't treating me like a woman, if you get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there were other levels to me. Like as a woman, I'm a mom, I'm a wife. And so there's layers to me, but it's just, you know, she didn't care about any of those other things. And obviously your mental health impacts all of those other things. So I like when my mental health providers ask me, you know, how are your kids doing? How's your husband? How's your family? Like, you know, those types of things, because I feel like she's treating me like a human being and not just I'm treating a veteran because that's part of my job. I don't like being around and interacting with people that they're doing it because they get a paycheck just to do it. I want to know that you are just as involved in my treatment and in my mental growth as I am, you know, as it would be, you know, like how would you want to be treated if you were being treated by a mental health professional? I want that same level of, you know, tenacity and that same level of care as if it were you. And I have found that I do find that more with female providers.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And just for everyone out there, you know, I always raise this question, just because when you are looking for help, you get to be picky and who helps you, right? So just because you get assigned to someone doesn't mean you can't raise your hand and say, hey, look, I want X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah.
But as long as it's in a professional manner, of course. Okay. So this has been a very interesting, exciting, full of life podcast, and I really appreciate you. So we're going to wrap it up. Just looking back from childhood to now, do you see your growth?
I have turned out amazing. And I say that because not for me, just personally, because I have had the opportunity to touch the lives of so many others and help them when they didn't have hope. You know, I started with hope and I ended up, my next mission was creating hope for other women, veterans, and children who have experienced homelessness, you know, financial difficulty, like I did through my organization, Final Salute. So I would say the hope that I envisioned for myself did come to fruition. And so I am very happy with the woman and the human being that I turned out to be.
I like that. I do. You are creating hope. Okay, so tell us, what advice would you give yourself or your son or your kids about dealing with trauma and grief?
That at first you have to accept it. The first thing is always, you know, just not saying, oh, there's nothing wrong with me, I'm just having a bad day. Take the signs seriously. You know, I talked about Robin Williams the other day, and, you know, he was one of the happiest, most comedic, you know, high energy people that, you know, we knew in the profession. And he lost his life to suicide, you know, so it's, you know, you have to take those signs seriously and don't put a, you know, a happy face over a sad face. Don't put on a facade, because all it would do is just bottle up, and it will grow, and it could turn into something very ugly. So take your signs seriously. Know yourself. If you're off, know yourself. If you have people, that there are people around you, you take notice. And if you see something off, hey man, you're okay, or hey girl, you're okay. But I would say you first to have self-awareness and that something is wrong, but also be accepting of, yes, if something is wrong, then I may need to find out what's wrong with me and get treatment for it. There's nothing wrong with getting treatment. I know for some people it's like, well, I'm not going to be able to get a job. I'm not going to be able to do this, this, and this. I will tell you, there are a lot of high functioning people, high productive people who have mental health issues. People like to say, oh, Jas, you've met Oprah. First of all, Oprah met me. That's how I look at it. I've been an international speaker. I've been on, CNN, been in People magazine. It's not to brag, but it's just again, to talk about, in addition to my disabilities, I also have capability. And as long as you take care of one, it will take care of the other. So don't think that you are damaged goods. You're not. You just have a need that needs some attention, but you are, again, you're ground zero to tend into those needs.
Indeed. I like that. There we go. Okay. Well, any resources, anybody you want to give a shout out, please tell us about your efforts that you're pushing currently in your business.
Sure. So I back in 2010, so we're coming up on our 10th year anniversary, I started an organization called Final Salute Inc., which provides safe and suitable housing to homeless women, veterans, and their children. We also provide emergency financial assistance to—
Say that name one more time.
Okay, Final Salute Inc.
Final Salute.
Yeah, we also provide emergency financial assistance to prevent homelessness, and we also provide free professional clothing to women who are in career transition. Right now, with COVID-19 and everything going on, we do have a virtual race called Move with a Purpose, and it's $25 per registration, and it basically, each registration provides 1 day off the street for a homeless woman, veteran, and her child. You can pick any distance you want. You have 30 days to complete the race. You can walk it, run it, bike it, swim it, treadmill it, stationary bike, whatever your ability level is. You can do a 5K as a group. Say, hey, girl, you take a couple blocks, you can mix it up, but it's just to move with a purpose and also still keep people active, while we're self-isolating and self-distancing. Something that most people don't know about me is that I am a filmmaker. And you talked about laughter, being a coping mechanism. I did write my first pilot comedy called Discharge last year. It's finished in a film festival rotation, and I'm working on my next animated short called The Sofa Bed, which will be released next year. And it's basically gives me another way to, write down feelings, but also write stories. There's, like, in Hollywood, when you see a lot about veterans, it's either a war movie or a PTSD documentary. Hollywood loves those. But, there's so many stories that can be told through comedy and animation. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, during our darkest times, when you're military, you're out there in the field in Afghanistan, somebody just starts telling jokes, to pass the time by, or, just doing silly things just to, boost morale. And so that's the storytelling genre that I took. So although I didn't get on TV to do my television anchoring, I still did go back into the filmmaking world.
I hear that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you coming on today and all the words and wisdom that you shared. Any last words of encouragement that you want to give out there to that one person that might need it?
I just want to say that it will get better, but you have to believe that it's going to get better. But you also have to be a proponent, of getting better. And you're not alone. There are a lot of people out there who are struggling and hurting, but we're also striving through that hurt and through that struggle. And reach out. I mean, if you're a civilian, there's numbers you can call. If you're a veteran, there's numbers you can call. But you have to make that call and reach out, and always check on your buddies.
There we go. All right. Well, everyone, we appreciate you listening on this episode. This is Jas and Greg with Guards Down, telling you guys guys and gals out there, to be safe, stay engaged, and stay focused. We're out.
That's what it's really all about. Giving yourself a fighting chance to just show what you got.